Hey everyone, it's Emily from butterbeliever.com, and today it's time for another episode of Q&A. Our first question is from Tiffany. Tiffany asks, how much fermented cod liver oil is recommended for pregnant women? And are there any other supplements or foods you highly recommend? Well, the only people that are really giving any sort of recommendations for fermented cod liver oil are the Weston A. Price Foundation. So, thankfully, they are getting that information out there. And what they recommend is 2 teaspoons of the fermented cod liver oil for pregnant women, which would be about twice as much as for adults who are not pregnant. So 2 teaspoons, or if you're taking the capsules, that'd be actually 20 capsules. So that's a lot of capsules. And then that's providing 19,000 international units of vitamin A and 3,900 of vitamin D. And so keep in mind, this is for the high vitamin fermented cod liver oil. It is a lot different than your standard cod liver oil you might find in a health food store. We went over that last week. So, and then in addition to the cod liver oil, I really do agree with the Weston A. Price's recommendations for a pregnancy diet overall. And one of the most important things that they recommend is liver. So that would be quality grass-fed liver from cows or chickens or lamb or really anything. Any kind of liver that's from a healthy grass-fed animal. It's going to have just tons of really important vitamins and minerals and nutrients that you need, and especially it's very high in folate, which is actually the natural form of folic acid. Folic acid isn't even something that's naturally occurring. It's the synthetic form of folate. It's much different than folate. It's the synthetic thing that they put in the prenatal supplements, and I don't recommend it. It's some other authors have written about it as being quite harmful. So no folic acid. You want folate, and liver is a great source for that. Oh, and it's 3 to 4 ounces of liver once or twice a week, ideally twice a week. So that's how much liver they want you to be making sure you get. And then as far as other foods that you should really be focusing on, lots of really good pastured eggs from, chickens that are legitimately running around in the sun, scratching and pecking at bugs. So really good eggs, a high quality dairy, grass-fed dairy, butter especially is really beneficial. Going to be giving you a lot of those fat-soluble activator vitamins that we Western Price people are so fond of. So dairy, let's see. Homemade bone broth actually would be a huge one I would focus on for a lot of reasons. It's super high in all kinds of minerals and nutrients, but it's also very high in collagen. And as you probably have heard, collagen is what's responsible for your skin's elasticity. So, pregnant women, if you want to be avoiding stretch marks, I mean, as vain as that is, I'm definitely planning on getting a lot of bone broth in myself when I'm hopefully pregnant someday for that reason. And then also, I'd recommend focusing a lot on seafood, especially shellfish. Shellfish, when you eat them, you're basically eating a whole animal if you think of it that way. So, all its organs and all that's, the extra stuff aside from the muscle meat that we like to try to focus on is all rolled into one. So, and I wouldn't really worry so much about the whole mercury issue. It's to me, it's more important to be getting in those nutrients and not stress about the mercury. And I'm not the only one saying this. I'll try to find some links to some more information about that for you. And of course, you want to make sure you're getting in plenty of good fats. In addition to butter, which I mentioned, I would make sure you get in a lot of good coconut oil, and also a decent amount of probiotic foods. You want to make sure that you're keeping a good bacterial environment in your gut to make sure that you have all the right kinds of bacteria to pass along to your little one when he or she comes. So that's mostly it for the pregnancy diet. I'll go ahead and link to the official West New Price site that has the rest of that information for you. Next up, we have a question from Mitzi. She asks, how do you read food ingredient labels? For example, almond milk. How do I research weird stuff like calcium carbonate and potassium citrate? Seems chemically made. When I Google it, I can never tell if it's good for you or bad. Well, that's a great question. A lot of us are so into reading these food labels, but it can be really hard to decipher what they mean. I think it's important to remember that even natural and healthy things have chemical sounding names. Even water is a chemical. And that's because everything that is made of matter is made of chemicals. Just the elements of the earth. So sodium bicarbonate, for example, well, that's just harmless baking soda. But of course, what we really mean when we talk about the dangers of these chemicals are, the ones that aren't naturally made or might even have toxic properties. So, something that is helpful that I've learned when I spend a lot of time on Google for research is to take a look at the related searches that are at the bottom of the page. For calcium carbonate, for example, one of the searches says calcium carbonate made from rocks. So a little digging around through that will tell you that calcium carbonate is actually a naturally occurring mineral compound, but the kind that you find in supplements or that's added into foods like your almond milk is made from limestone, and they process it with an acid to extract it. Potassium citrate, the other example you gave, well, that's a salt, and the information that you find says that it's used to regulate acidity by making a food product more alkaline. But you're right. It is kind of difficult to find concrete information that will tell you, exactly where these things come from or if they're bad for you. That's why I just think, kind of as a general rule, if you really don't know what something is or you have a hard time finding out what it is, that, it's probably best if you avoid it. Actually, I'm working on writing an ebook. It's coming out pretty soon. And I have in it, my label reading rules, which go kind of something like this. If you can't pronounce it, don't know what it is, can't buy it in a store, or you wouldn't stock your cupboards with it, it's probably something you should avoid, within reason. I mean, your example is a great one because a lot of times it's just better to, make a homemade version of whatever it is that, is in question that you're not quite sure about. Almond milk is super easy to make. I think you just toss some almonds in with some boiled water in a food processor and blend it up and strain it. A lot of times finding out how to make these kinds of foods yourself is fun, and sometimes it's easy, and, it'll a lot of times taste a lot better than the store-bought versions. So I'd say, don't stress about it, but if you really can't find out what something is and you think you might need to avoid it, then you probably should, and see if you can make whatever the food is yourself. And finally, we have a question from Kat. She says, I appreciated your posts about chia and flaxseed, but I was wondering about hemp seed. Is it worthwhile? Well, surprise, surprise, hemp seed is also not super awesome. The omega-3 that's in it is also in the form of ALA, which, as we discussed, isn't very usable in the body. And hemp is actually pretty darn high in those polyunsaturated fatty acids. It's actually like 80% PUFA. So if you've been following, I definitely would prefer avoiding those polyunsaturated fatty acids. So hemp seeds, definitely not something I would intentionally go and buy and add to my food or use, hemp powder or any of that. So, Again, like I always say, if it's something you really love, then go for it. Just understand, the truth about these foods and that they're not always the super magic supplement that they're made out to be. Well, that about does it for this week. So, if you have a question about real food or nutrition or natural health, feel free to send me an email. It's questions@butterbeliever.com, and I'd be happy to answer you here on this Q&A series. We'll see you next time. Thanks.